Welcome to Groundwater Talk Live. I'm Tom Ballard, the Groundwater Guy, welcoming you to our show today where we're going to talk about the latest Colorado River deal and will it stick? So, deals have been tried there in the past. They've been wrangling over that since before 1920, and so this is the latest deal. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about the latest deal and the implications and what still needs to be done. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But first, let me ask you to like, comment, and share on these Groundwater Talk Live videos. It helps us get the word out there, and the more people like and share and comment, that helps us beat the algorithm and get the word out to people. We've been growing our subscriber base slowly but surely, but I would really like to get that up there. YouTube especially gives you certain privileges if you hit 1,000 subscribers. So that's our goal for this year. We'll see if we make it, but we are kind of in a little bit of a niche market here. So. That's what we're shooting for. So, liking, commenting, and sharing. And if you comment, I always respond to comments. So I'm happy to get feedback from people. So I will always respond to comments. All right, so let's dive in a little bit. We're going to talk about the latest Colorado River deal and what it is not. It's the Bureau of well, a little bit of background. Let's go back to first things first. How the heck? And I get comments from people. How the heck does talking about surface water really deal with our focus here on groundwater issues? And the answer to that is very simple: is that if people aren't getting, if these big users are not getting their surface water deliveries, then guess what they're going? Where they're going? They're going to groundwater. So it does impact groundwater. It's all part of the same resource. People need water. And if they're not going to get it from surface water deliveries, then groundwater is where it's going to be, and we're going to have more pressure on our groundwater resources that are already stressed out west. So, and in the Midwest as well, and all over the country actually. So, so that is the relationship there. And so going back a little bit, we since the original Colorado River Compact since 1922 that basically broke everything out and allocated Colorado River resources and over allocated them actually is what it really comes down to, and that's been part of our problem is the law of the river was based on this 1922 Colorado River Compact, and basically it allocated more resources than there are actually there. And in recent years, we have seen a decline in water flowing through the Colorado River and filling up these reservoirs. Lake Mead and Lake Powell are actually have been at some pretty critical levels. There's two levels you really need to be concerned with, and one is dead pool where no water passes the dam at all, and so that's really critical because no water is flowing downstream. But even before you get to dead pool, you have minimum power pool, which is the level at which electrical generation ceases. And since a lot of people rely on electricity generated at Lake Powell and Lake Mead, this is really important. So probably as important as the water is the power, but they go hand in hand. So we got two levels. We have minimum power pool, which we were definitely approaching in both Lake Mead and Lake Powell, and dead pool, which is a ways off yet. Now, fortunately, the spring rainstorm or the winter rainstorms and spring rainstorms have really basically lessened the danger. But even with record snowpacks in this area and all the input to Lake Mead and Lake Powell and out down the Colorado River, we're going to see reservoir levels at less than 50% of capacity. Now, the long-term projections are the return of El Nino out west, which could mean wetter weather, so we may see drought conditions recede, but they can always come back, and that's been part of the problem is we've kind of been gripped with a lot of drought. It's due mainly to El Nino and La Nina cycles, And a lot of people attribute this to climate change and hotter, drier weather. I count me as skeptical because I really think that our natural weather patterns with the El Nino La Nina cycles in the Pacific, plus overuse and over allocation that goes all the way back to the 1922 Colorado River Compact, really has put the stress on the river. So um, if there's hotter, drier weather, I think you can attribute a lot of that to these natural weather cycles. But climate change, if you want, if you're a believer in climate change, then you can attribute to that. Certainly, the fact that we've had hotter, drier weather, whether that's a natural cycle or anthropogenic, we can argue about that all day. But certainly, hotter, drier weather has impacted the Colorado River. Probably not as much as the overuse. I mean, we've had population growth. We've got a lot of agriculture going on that uses Colorado River water, and that agriculture probably we're growing some things that probably shouldn't be grown in a desert because there's the water, and it's becoming a problem. And we've talked about this on this show before, but just so you know, that that is I haven't changed my position on that. Is that it's great that we can grow all this lettuce in Yuma, Arizona, but it's a desert, and the only reason you can do that is because the water from the Colorado River. And the Central Arizona Project, for instance, in California, there's a number of water projects, but California gets the lion's share of Colorado River water under the Colorado River Compact because they have senior water rights, and a lot of that is based on the age of the water rights, like it is in most Western states. Water law is based on seniority. First in time, first in right is really what it comes down to. That dates back to the mining days, actually. So, Arizona, on the other hand, has a lot of junior water rights. So they're kind of lower down the totem pole on things. So there's been a lot of scrabbling that's been going on, trying to do the cuts and reductions that are necessary to keep the Colorado River flowing. The Bureau of Reclamation was discussing cuts, and if they didn't come to an agreement, then they were discussing cuts of 2 to 4 million acre feet per year, and those are some pretty substantial cuts. And so by the Colorado River Compact, then California would greatly benefit. Arizona would kind of lose out on that because of their junior water rights. So, for instance, so you can see how complicated this really gets in a hurry, and why negotiating these deals, and there's been a history of these deals to try to get reductions in place, and everybody's been fighting over them. Irrigation districts are sued, and so it's a hot mess is really what it is. There is a first step that has been made, and let's kind of dive into that a little bit. This is from the Los Angeles Times, just within the last few days, and what we're looking at here is basically an outline of the deal. I got articles from. Let me just get to that so I can scroll through here. But there are articles in both the LA Times and the New York Times that basically discuss this deal. I'll go over it, and and we'll talk about the pros and cons of this deal, and the weaknesses, and whether it'll actually stick. We've had some deals that have tried to reduce the takes in the past that have fallen through, and so this one may work, but I will tell you right up front, this is not going to be adequate based on that 2 to 4 million in cuts the Bureau of Reclamation was recommending. This is basically going to get to 1 million acre feet per year. So halfway, even if you take the most liberal assumption of the 2 million acre feet that needs to be cut. So there's more work to be done right up front. However, just getting 7 states on the same page with this has been a monumental task. It's failed a few times. Will this stay? There's still some things that need to be done to actually approve this. The feds have to approve this, and there has to be an actual deal. There has to be an environmental impact statement, and there's already some rumblings from different environmental groups that they are not happy with this deal, and they may try to sabotage it. So there are some, some things lurking in the shadows that could do this deal, but right now it is a step in the right direction. Is what I'll say. It doesn't get to all the cuts that are needed, but that is where we are. So this deal that was reached. California, Arizona, and Nevada have committed to reducing water by 3 million acre feet between now and the end of 2026. So, average of a million acre feet per year, and that's basically cutting water use by about 14%, which is pretty substantial. Now, if you went all the way to the 2 million, then you're talking almost a third of the water use. If you go to 4 million, obviously you can see you're cutting things pretty much in half, and that's going to be a little tougher to get to. This was hard. This deal was hard enough, and so trying to get to 2 to 4 million is going to be quite challenging, and I can see a lot of potential problems down the road as we as we dive into that. But anyway, so the federal government had, through the Bureau of Reclamation, had laid out some options for larger cuts, but this kind of gets us going. So, and this article points out that the reservoirs have declined to their lowest levels on record during 23 years of drought. The drought has kind of come and gone, but there have been some sustained drought periods. So you can really say that on a macro picture, we're really looking at 23 years of mostly drought conditions, and that's really impacted things. So once again, climate change is what they're talking about. I would argue that it's mainly El Nino, La Nina. Whether El Nino, La Nina cycles are exacerbated by anthropogenic climate change, I think is a little dubious, but there are people who would make that argument, so I'm not going to debate that today. I've debated that on other occasions, but I'm not going to debate that today, and we'll just say that hotter, drier conditions have really reduced the flows in the river. This year has helped, but we're really going to need some sustained inputs to the river to kind of even get back close to what we had. So this is a start. Is really what it comes down to. And excuse me, I'm a little something to wet my whistle here. So as I pointed out, the proposed cuts under this agreement amounted to about half of the reductions the federal officials had called for previously, and on the high end, this is like 25%. So that's they had the Bureau of Reclamation last month had laid out two options, and we'll look at those. But there were really three options. There's always the no action option, but there were a couple other options, and they really wanted to hit a minimum of 2 million. They're still going to press for that. So we got another million that needs to be cut at a minimum. But we are helped by the weather. Federal officials, as you can see here, have estimated that runoff into the river's reservoirs this year will be 149% of average. So this is good news to refill these reservoirs. But even at that, like I said, we're looking at maybe getting to 50% of capacity. So 1 year of even record snowfalls is not enough to offset the 23 years of alternating drought conditions that have really impacted this water supply system. So anyway, they Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Wyoming are all the states that border on the sorry about that border on the Colorado River, and that is those are the parties to this agreement. Now, the Colorado River, by the original 1922 Colorado River Compact, is divided into upper and lower basins. California, Arizona, and Nevada are in the lower basin. The other 4 states are in the upper part of the basin. So the lower part of the basin probably disproportionately uses more water than the upper part of the basin. So, or the upper basin. So that once again, you can see the complexity of this deal. So anyway, they think that this deal is going to be sufficient to provide the water they need, and prevent the reservoirs from reaching minimum power pool or dead pool, um, even if dry conditions return during the next 3 years, which this deal is effective for 2026. And so they're confident. Others, the Bureau of Reclamation says this is a good start. We're a little skeptical, so there's a little bit of a disagreement on that. Obviously, people want to get as much water as they can, but so and if we're going for doubling these cuts, we're looking at some substantial impacts, and we're already going to look at some substantial impacts. So part of this deal, and there's this article. I'm hitting the highlights here of this particular article that talks about this deal, but right here, federal officials say much of the reductions will come by paying agricultural owners, irrigation districts, and other water districts, including tribes, to conserve water, basically using $1.2 billion from the Inflation Reduction Act. So this is kind of a one-time shot, and that's why a more permanent solution using these options is probably not in the cards. And but you're basically going to pay farmers to fallow lands and people not to use as much water is really what it comes down to. And a lot of this is achieved by fallowing farmlands. So, and once again, we can get into the argument is, are they growing things out there they shouldn't be growing in a desert because they have the water, or they have had the water. So California is the state that uses the largest share of Colorado River, has pledged to shoulder a large share of the reductions, about 1.6 million acre feet through 2026. This is significant because California in the past has been a little recalcitrant on these deals because under the 1922 Colorado River Compact, they have senior water rights, and so they have priority over the water as opposed to the junior water rights in places like Arizona. So California has been difficult to bring to the table because they're saying, we're covered. We have the water rights here. We have the senior water rights, so we're kind of covered. We have less incentive to negotiate. So this has been a challenge in past deals. So there you go. So California has come to the table, and they've actually volunteered some substantial reductions. This is a huge deal, actually. It really is. As dubious as I am of California's motivation sometimes, this is actually a great step forward because they've agreed to share a lot of the burden, and that helps a lot because they've looked away from the allocations in the Colorado River Compact, and they're trying to come up with a practical deal, and that is a good starting point. So let's scroll on here. I wanted to point out that the Imperial Irrigation District, which delivers the single largest share of Colorado River waters to farms in the Imperial Valley, has pledged to contribute 250,000 acre feet of water per year in this deal. This also is significant because in past deals that haven't quite worked out, in 2019 and other ones, is Imperial Water District has really basically killed the deals and actually sued in one case that I'm aware of to stop that particular deal because they deliver so much water to their farmers and they're impacted by this. So the fact that they've come to the table with California is also a big deal and a step in the right direction. So Above here, you can see some tribal contributions. 233 million of that 1.2 billion from the Inflation Reduction Act will go to Arizona's Gila River Indian community to compensate the tribal nation for leaving water in Lake Mead. So that's another big deal here. I didn't yellow highlight that, but I did want to point that out. Um, so anyway, the way this works with Imperial Water District is once an agreement on the federal funding is completed, and that still has yet to be done, we should say, growers are expected to be able to volunteer to reduce water usage, and that's mainly going to be some conservation, but it's mainly going to be fallowing fields. So once they do that, they volunteer to do that, then they're going to get cash payments on that. So Palo Verde Water Irrigation District, that's around Blythe in California. They're going to scale up their land fallowing programs. This is what I'm talking about is fallowing acreage. So the amount of farmland they're taking out of production in the area is going to increase from about 20,000 acres to more than 26,000 acres. So an additional 6,000 acres, about 28% of the area's farmland is represented in this 26,000 acres. So this is significant because less crops being grown. So the managers of Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, which is a very big water user because it's a Los Angeles area, it supplies water to cities across the region, expect, and there's that key word here, expect. They're not committing right now, but they're expecting to leave a portion of their allotment in Lake Mead. But as this points out, and I should have put this in orange also, these and other details remain to be firmed up and voted on later this year. So there's some expectations here, and there's a lot of, this is the deal. The framework is really what's in place. Now we need to have the federal government approve it. Now we need to have the federal government apply the cash so we can actually implement this deal that gets us to about 50% of the reductions we actually need. So let's scroll down here. There's some usual government officials patting themselves on the back and all that stuff. So and this article points out too that the 1922 Colorado River Compact originally divided the river among the states, and it promised more water than the Colorado could deliver. So if everybody took all their allocations, then my goodness, then I'm just going to turn that off. If everybody took their allocations, then the Colorado River would be dry. I mean, there's everybody couldn't take all their allocations because they're allocated more water than the river can deliver. So, and as they point out, in this last 23 years of mostly drought cycle, rising temperatures have intensified the drought. The river's flow has declined by about 20%. So not only have you got more water allocated than you can deliver, the river's flow has been declining due to these climate cycles that we're seeing. So scientists have found that roughly half the decline in the river's flow has been caused by higher temperatures, and they attribute that to climate change. I attribute that mainly to El Nino, La Nina, but we're not going there today. So we can argue about that another day. So so there's a little bit of history here. In 2019, as reservoir levels were dropping, there was a deal called the Drought Contingency Plan. Those reductions were insufficient. The states agreed to an additional deal in 2021, but that was not adequate as well, thus leading to the current deal and the threats by the Bureau of Reclamation to impose 2 to 4 million acre feet per year of cuts. So that provided a motivator because we were rapidly approaching that deadline where the Bureau of Reclamation hammer was going to fall. So and this is important. While the ample snow in the Rockies has reduced those risks for the next couple of years, scientists have continued to advise that larger cuts are necessary because at some point we're going to slip back into the drought cycle. You can just count on it. We're not going back to wet weather. Um, you know, we're going back to the more norms. As a geologist, I can tell you that California has more of a history as a desert than a relatively wet environment. We've actually been, for the last few centuries in a relatively wet environment. But if you look at geologic history, California has been a lot drier. So this is why I'm skeptical on the climate change, because California really has a geologic history as a desert. So that's why I say a lot of these things are probably natural cycles we're looking at, although there could be an anthropogenic component. So, 1 million acre feet is what they've agreed to for 3 years, representing a 14% reduction in consumptive water use in the 3 lower basin states of California, Arizona, and Nevada. So now, based on the decline in the river's flow this century, the Colorado River Basin will need 4 million acre feet in reductions annually to address the water deficit and allow for reservoirs to recover. So 1 million acre feet is 14%. That gets us to over a 50% reduction if we're looking for 4 million acre feet. That is going to be very challenging to do, and I am very, very skeptical that we're going to get there. We're going to have to, because if we can't, if the water levels continue, if we slip back into another drought cycle, and the water levels continue to decline, then if you reach dead pool levels, then basically you're dead. You're done. You're going to have basically water reduction forced on you because there's going to be no water. So this guy, Jack Schmidt from Utah State University, he says we have to find another 3 million acre feet. That's going to be very challenging. So that's why I got it in orange here, because I am skeptical that can happen. It's been a fight to get to the 1 million. So to have over a 50% reduction in water use from the Colorado River, think about the implications of that. What that's going to do to farming. It's going to devastate farming in this area. So how's that going to impact the entire country? That we get a lot of our vegetables from this area. So there's going to be some fundamental changes in order for this to happen. All right. So as I mentioned, having one good winter does not solve the systemic challenges facing the Colorado River. Now, new rules that need to be negotiated by the end of 2026, and this is the next phase, are to replace the current 2007 guidelines. So there's a little bit of time, but it'll be here before we know it, and we're going to have a real fight on our hands. So you can expect these battles to be ongoing, and I would argue that it's going to get really ugly. It's going to get really ugly, and like I say, there's going to have to be some fundamental changes in agriculture and how we use water in this area, permanent rationing and a lot of fallowed farmland in this area. That's just the way it is. All right. So I think that's most of the deal here. There's even some concerns in this current deal. There's about 700,000 acre feet that would not come in exchange for compensation of the federal funds. So how are you going to do that? So people aren't going to get paid to do this. It's going to be a little more voluntary. And so there are even some places where the current deal, even with all the Fed shoveling money at the water system users, is that 700,000 acre feet is still undefined where it's going to come from. And so there are even some places like this where this current deal could fall apart. So there you have that. Let's look at this next one. I'm going to go through this one a little more quickly. this is the the deal from this is the New York Times, basically reporting on the same thing. So because it is a big deal, because the Colorado River provides so much water for the southwestern U.S. So the agreement on cuts, aided by a wet winter and 1.2 billion federal payments, expires at the end of 2026. So that's 3 short years. It'll be here before we know it. And there's some pretty pictures here. There are a little bit more details. The federal government will pay 1.2 billion to irrigation districts, cities, and Native American tribes in the 3 states if they temporarily use less water. Once this deal runs out, then these water cuts are no longer in play. So there's going to have to be another deal reached that's going to make these cuts permanent and add at least another million acre feet a year to that. And some people want to take that all the way to a total of 4 million acre feet per year. So just a little background. Colorado River supplies drinking water to 40 million Americans in 7 states, as well as parts of Mexico. Irrigates 5.5 million acres of farmland, just so you get the scale of the significance here. The electricity generated by dams by Lake Mead and Lake Mead Canyon. What is it? Canyon Dam and Glen Canyon Dam and Hoover Dam. So, or did they change the name back to Boulder Dam? I think they did actually. Glen Canyon Dam and Hoover Dam / Boulder Dam supply power to millions and millions of homes. So, and Las Vegas is very dependent on, for instance, on both the water and the power. Now, this is a whole other topic, but you can argue that Las Vegas should probably not exist because the artificiality of Lake Mead has really sustained Las Vegas, the water for all their water shows in front of the casinos and the population. It would not be sustainable without Lake Mead being there, providing both power and water. So this is some of the challenges that the future challenges that need to be addressed in the Southwest. We got a lot of population centers that really probably should not exist, and Las Vegas being one of them. And okay, that's a little bit of a controversial statement, but let me just rephrase it a little bit and say, in a natural condition, the water and power would not be there to sustain a city or a metropolitan area the size of Las Vegas. It just the only reason that Las Vegas exists in the form it does is because of the water and the power from Lake Powell or Lake Mead. So that's a huge deal. So Hoover Dam really changed the Boulder Dam, Hoover Dam really changed the face of southern Nevada and allowed Las Vegas to exist in its present form. It wouldn't be there otherwise. Okay, so population growth, huge deal, sucking up a lot of the water, and once again, we got more water allocated than we can use. So there's just I hit some highlights here. I think these are some of the same things. Once again, pointing out the 700,000 acre feet is undefined at this point, so that's still a point of argument. It needs to be worked out. All right, so let's look at this is the official announcement from the Department of the Interior. So a lot of this is the administration patting themselves on the back for facilitating all this. There was the Bureau of Reclamation had applied the pressure, but politicians always like to pat themselves on the back and take credit for other people's stuff. But a lot of the credit really goes to the states for coming up with this deal at this point. So this is basically just that announcement. Now, Here's another potential sticking point, though, that I wanted to point out is in the coming weeks, the Bureau of Reclamation will publish the Notice of Intent for Environmental Impact Statement related to the post-2026 guidelines. So there was a draft environmental impact statement, and that got withdrawn in favor of some of these deals. Now there will be a new one that will have to be implemented. This is where the environmental groups normally pitch in and can muddy things up a little bit. So watch for that coming up with a more permanent solution that they're going to want things. The environmental groups are going to want more drastic cuts. The water operators are going to want minimal cuts, and so there's still going to be a fight that could squirrel some of these deals. And I think there's a lot of statistics in here. This is available online, and a lot of these things, these press releases, tend to be self-congratulatory. But all right, so this is one more article that has actually this is from LA Times, has a little bit of background in it. And they talk about the law of the river that goes back to the 1922 Colorado River Compact, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a little bit. So, but basically that divided the flow between the 7 states. So, and this really is, let me just point, California, their interest always has been in sticking to the Colorado River Compact because that gives them the lion's share of the deal. So the other states are making other arguments. So it was a big deal that California and Imperial Irrigation District came to the table on this because they recognized that we got to come up with some kind of deal, and it's going to involve some cuts. So once again, pointing out that California has the senior water rights, and a lot of the Colorado River Compact is based on seniority of water rights. So, this deal here, the authors of the original Colorado River Compact made the fateful decision, and it really was a fateful decision, and this is how you end up over-allocating the water. They divvied up the water for the base of the river's lower basin states of California, Arizona, and Nevada in absolute quantity. So many acre feet instead of percentages. So it's not percentage of available flow. And this is where the problem lies it was the decision to do this in terms of quantity because they were basing it on the flows at the time that have been impacted. So this then, and California has a legal right to go back and say, look, we get this much water. It's in the deal that everybody signed in 1922. And that is the basis for that is no longer valid. But the legal agreement still exists. So this has been a real sticking point in why California has really kind of taken advantage of this. So anyway, so the upper basin states are obligated to deliver 7.5 million acre feet per year to the lower states no matter what. Now, in dry years like we've been experiencing, this means they basically have to give up all their water from the Colorado River pretty much to deliver this 7.5 million acre feet. And that is a challenge. So anyway, this is a little bit of there's some other information here, and in the interest of time, we're not going to go through all this. There is some history here, and I wanted to point out a couple other articles. This is from April of 2023 when they were still arguing about things. There were some preliminary agreements and some meetings, and there was a couple options. One of the options would the federal government would make water reductions based predominantly on the existing priority system for water rights, i.e., the 1922 Colorado River Compact, which would have enormously benefited California. The other option, the Bureau of Reclamation would have analyzed the effects of the reductions, distributed in the same percentage for all water uses of the lower three basin states of California, Arizona, and Nevada. Much more equitable, but it is not in conformance with the Colorado River Compact. So California really has a pretty good legal argument that option one is the way you want to go. So anyway, that approach would mean across-the-board cuts for all water users in the region, including senior water rights holders, i.e. California. So that were already, on top of 13% of cuts, were already agreed to in the 2019 deal. So let me, this just talks about the supplemental environmental impact statement. This is now going to be vacated, and they're going to come up with a new one, and that's going to be part of the process, and you're going to see a lot of the environmental groups come into play during the new environmental impact statement. So that's really all I'm going to say on this in the interest of time here. So this basically discussed the 2019 deal, and that turned out to be inadequate. But once again, we have people that are congratulating themselves on making a deal, and it is, when you look at the background, it is challenging to make a deal. So they can pat themselves on the back for cutting these deals, because trying to get all these people to the same table and come up with agreements, especially in light of California saying, could just say, we're just taking what we're legally deserve, and so it's, the negotiation has been tough and has been ongoing, and that's why I still say the current deal is fraught with some difficulties, because there's some undefined things and some challenges in there. So anyway, this just gives a little bit of background. This deal turned out to be inadequate, thus where we are today. So I just wanted to point that out. But once again, even in 2019, when they did this deal, one good year is helpful, but it doesn't fix a 19-year drought. At this point, 23-year drought, and it doesn't do anything to predict for us what's going to happen next. And this is true. We haven't been real good at predicting the El Nino, La Nina cycles. There's been a lot of attempts on that. I read a book just basically on those cycles, and it is fascinating stuff, but it is challenging to understand actually how that works, because it balances out across the Pacific. Southeast Asia gets impacted from El Nino, La Nina also, but at opposite cycles that we do for the most part. There are some caveats to that, but so it basically circulates back and forth across the Pacific, and so it's this huge system, and it's not as predictable as we would like to be. So anyway, in the 2019 deal, California's Imperial Irrigation District actually sued to challenge the deal, so they didn't come to the table like they did in the current one. All right, let's kind of wrap up with, this is the actual 1922 Colorado River Compact. So the actual agreement was approved August 19th, 1921, and then it was ratified in 1922. So it includes the states of Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming, all states that border or within the basins of the Colorado River. And Article 1 here talks about the equitable division and apportionment. But what's important here is it divides the Colorado River Basin into two basins. There's the upper basin and the lower basin. So California, Nevada, and Arizona are the lower basin states. The other four, the upper basin states. And those upper basin states, by this agreement, are agree to commit 7.5 million acre feet to the lower basin. So no matter what, even if there isn't 7.5 million acre feet passing through the river, that's what they have to allocate. So they could have zero some years if that was the case. So, Article 3 here, a portion from the Colorado River says in perpetuity to the upper basin and the lower basin, respectively, the exclusive beneficial consumptive use of 7.5 million acre feet per annum. So that's the statement right there. So absolute numbers rather than percentages. If this had been properly designed at the time, and granted, we're going back to the 1920s here, the early 1920s, then you're really looking at a situation where, obviously the science was not where it's at now, and so we were talking in absolute numbers instead of percentages. If they knew what we knew now, they obviously would go back and do the percentages. So that's kind of where we're at now. So the lower basin is hereby given the right to increase its beneficial consumptive use of such water by 1 million acre feet per annum. So there's some options there for the lower basin. So the lower basin really, the upper basin area probably not as well developed at the time, so they didn't squawk too much about this. But now there's a lot more development, and the water is just not enough to go around. And the rest of this relatively short agreement, I think it's 5 pages, is basically laying out the deal here. This is available online, and there's some other little wrinkles in here and stuff, but this is where it all started on the Colorado River. We're trying to modify this. They really need to basically scrap this deal and come up with a new one, but because of the seniority of water rights issue, you would have California really squawking about that. This agreement really plays to California's benefit, so they're not going to agree to scrap this and start over. So what we're dealing is with some, we have a legal agreement here, and then we're dealing with some practical management applications. This is what these deals really amount to. I don't know what the official word for that would be, is you're kind of laying them on top of this, and we're saying, this is what this legal deal says. This is actually how we're going to manage it for this time period, and so that's kind of where we're at on this. And like I say, there's no way California would agree to just doing away with the Colorado River Impact and Compact and starting over. It just is not going to happen. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. So all right, so that is the show today, and you can see once again that even though we're talking about surface water, the importance of the Colorado River in the Southwest is just absolutely huge, and it impacts municipals, it impacts agricultural operations and farms, and so you can see the impacts of these cuts. How we're going to get to what they want is 4 million in cuts as opposed to the 1 million. The 1 million was hard enough to get to as it was. 4 million, I would argue, is going to be nigh on impossible, but you're going to have to do something. So it's so expect a lot more roll up the sleeves and down and out, knockout, drag out fights over this in the future. So they bought a little bit of a 3-year reprieve, but as we know, time goes fast, and 2026 will be here before we know it, and they'll be back to fighting about these deals because these cuts are temporary. So that is the show. That's my commentary, my pithy commentary on these types of deals. And don't forget that surface water deliveries affect groundwater, because if people aren't getting their surface water deliveries, they're turning to groundwater, and that's a huge deal, because from the Midwest all the way out to the Southwest, our groundwater aquifers are being severely impacted and overdrafted. So by more people turning to groundwater because they're not getting their surface water deliveries, we're all impacted. So there is a connection, and that's why I spend some time talking about these deals, and it is a huge water deal. So there you go. All right, so if you'd like to be a guest on Groundwater Talk Live, if you had a great groundwater topic to talk about, I'd love to have you on. This is my Book Me page. You can come on there and book for a show. I'd love to have you, and that would be great. So We stream on the Groundwater Guy YouTube channel, and all our past shows are there. I think we're approaching 90 shows at this point, so we got like 90 some videos there. So we live stream in there, but all our past videos are there. And we also live stream on LinkedIn, also on Facebook and Twitch. Although I don't, those last two, I have no idea what our audiences are. Probably not much. We mainly get our audiences through YouTube and LinkedIn, so that's my primary focus. But we're trying to deliver the word out there because we think we provide some good information here, and so. But this is, if you're looking for us, you can find us there. And speaking of the YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe to the Groundwater Guy YouTube channel and hit the bell if you want to see future shows. We do this every Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Time, and come on and join us live. Comment if you like. I always like that when we got people watching the show live and they comment, and we can chat. It breaks things up a little bit. So until then, we will see you next week.